Welcome to the Polyglot Engineer channel. I'm David, and I wanted to do a quick video tonight to talk a little bit about serializing, deserializing data in Swift and Objective-C. So Apple has a habit of naming things differently. They had the famous Think Different advertising campaign. Well, they also name things differently. So perfect example of this in C# and Java as an example. When you are creating an interface or implementing an interface, that is called a protocol in the Apple world. And the same thing applies to a number of other things as well. So in the Apple world, if you're going to serialize and deserialize data, that's called archiving and unarchiving. And if you're not familiar with serialization and what that means, so when you are designing and building objects in your software, a lot of times you want to be able to take that object and essentially turn it into a very flat structure that make it easier to do things like save onto a hard drive or upload into a database or something like that. And so it's a very common thing. It's also very useful so that when you, let's say, kill your app or quit your application, the data that you're working with, you can persist it and then bring it back and essentially inflate it back into an object or data structure that you want to work with inside your application. So I want to take a quick look here at this class that I have here. So I've designed this class here called Vehicle. And in it I have a couple of different properties. I have one for the make, the model, and then the number of tires this vehicle requires. And then I also have this init here. So if I want to, let's say, create a new object based off of this init, I can just say let my vehicle, and we'll just say equal to vehicle. And now it's going to use the constructor that I have defined right here for my public init. So I'm going to say make, and we'll make this a Tesla, and the model, we'll make this a Model 3, and then for the tires, that's going to take an integer, and we'll just say it's going to have 4 tires. So now we have our my vehicle object, which was created using the constructor for this vehicle. Now, if I wanted to take this and store this, I'm going to have to do a couple other things to this in order to be able to make this something that's archivable. And the way you do that in Swift or Objective-C, for that matter, is you have to assign a protocol called NSCoding, and it also has to be, since you're essentially going to be working inside the Objective-C runtime, it's also going to need to conform to the NS object as well. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say this is an NS object, and then to add my protocol I just have to put a comma after that, and the protocol I'm going to use is going to be NSCoding. So NSCoding is what's going to make this so that it's serializable. And we have a visitor. Excuse me. So now that I've done that, it's prompted me. It's saying here that this vehicle does not conform to NSCoding. So one of the things that's really nice about Xcode is that it will actually prompt you to add stubs for the necessary methods or properties that you need for this to conform to that protocol. So just by clicking that, I was able to add these 2 functions here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy these and move these down here. Oops. And so for this encode function, what I'm going to do is I have some code that I've written out for this. So this is taking a coder, and what it's going to do is it's going to take these values here, and oops. I'll just format that a little bit. It's going to take these different values here, and it's going to encode them with the encoder. And the next thing it's looking for here is this required init. And so I'm going to do something else to this because we want to be able to use this. I'm going to make this public. And I'm also going to tell it that this needs to be a convenience init. And the reason why I'm doing that is because we're going to use this init essentially as a secondary constructor for calling the init that we've defined here below. So what we'll go ahead and do is just paste a little code in here. All right. And so what this is doing is this is taking the coder and it's deflating these values. It's taking the values from the coder, it's decoding them, and then it's assigning them to these different local variables here. And what this will do is once we come here and we call the self.init, which is calling this method right here, it's going to construct this object so that it has all of this stuff in here. So I'm going to format this a little bit, make that a little bit nicer, and do the same thing here. All right, so now I have all the methods in here that I need to support NS coding. But I'm going to do one more thing here. So the one thing here that's missing here is that there's new functionality when you're going to archive and unarchive code inside of either iOS or macOS, and that is, that's called the NS Secure Coding. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more protocol here, NS Secure Coding. And once again, this is going to prompt me. It says I don't conform to NS Secure Coding. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. And when I fix that, you can see here it adds this static variable right here called support secure coding. And so what this will do is when we're going to archive and unarchive, we can actually specify whether or not we want to use secure coding. And that'll become important because there's going to be things you want to do. There's a specific type of hack that can occur against macOS and iOS applications when you are reinflating an object and you don't specify a specific type. It can cause, or there's a chance that somebody could load a different object up and then hack your application by doing so. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to set this to true. And so now we have our full-on class here. And now that we have our full-on class, I want to be able to archive this. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the NS keyed archiver. So I'm going to come over here and say NS keyed archiver. And this has a archive function, so I'm going to call the archive function, but specifically archive data. So here's our archive data. And we can see right here that it's looking for two things. It's looking for our root object, and then it's also looking to see whether or not we want to support the secure coding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it I want to pass in my vehicle. And we're going to make this true. Alright, so now we're supporting the required secure coding. We can do this, but we can see right here that this throws an error. And so since this throws an error, we have to do this inside of a do catch. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to define a do catch. And we'll just print out our error here. And we'll pass it in like this. Oops. So we're going to say error.localized description. So we'll just print that error out here. Now that I've done that, I'm just going to copy this line of code and put it inside of here. And then the last thing I need to do here is set this to my new value here. And so for this, I'm going to call this my flat vehicle, or my vehicle data would be something else you could call this. And I'm going to tell it try. And so what will happen here is that for whatever reason, if it's not able to initialize this, and it creates a error, I'll throw the error and then it'll get caught right down here in this part of the statement. So now that I've done that, let's actually deflate this into a new object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let my deserialized object, and now we're going to use a different helper class. This time I'm going to use the NS keyed unarchiver, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that I want to unarchive this object, and we know the class here, so what I can say is of class, and I'm going to specify in here that I want that class to be a vehicle. So I'm going to say vehicle, and this is where the secure coding comes in really handy here, because now we're telling it specifically you can decode this, but it needs to be this specific object type or this specific class. So I'm going to come over here and say vehicle.self, and from the data I'm going to use our flat vehicle. Now one last thing I need to do here is I need to call try on this, because this also can throw an error. And so there, now we have our object that should be deserialized if we want to just test that to see if it's got the value in there that we're looking for. We said that the model is going to be the Model 3, so let's take a look and see if that's actually the case. So what I'm going to do is, I kind of misspelled that, but that's okay. I say deserialize, and now what I want to do is I want to say print, and we're going to take our deserialized object and print out the model and see what that looks like. Alright, and let's see if this will run. And voila, it's actually recreated this object. So that is essentially deserializing and serializing. And once again, if you're going to be doing that, one of the reasons why you'd probably want to do that is so that if you need to save it to the file system using the file manager, or save it to a database like the SQLite database that comes built into Mac OS and iOS, this comes in very handy. So hopefully this helps you. If you like video like this, you like content like this, please give this video a thumbs up. If you don't like it, you can give it a thumbs down, but please give it a thumbs up. And subscribe to my channel. That helps with the YouTube algorithms, and the more people that subscribe to the channel, the easier to make it for these videos and stuff to make it available to other people that are looking for content like this. With that, have a nice evening.